Welcome into WeAreSC. Welcome into Five Things. This is Eric McKinney, joined by Greg Katz and Mark Culkin. Guys, we are going to in a minute talk about number 23 for now, USC's 27-20 win over number 13 for now, LSU Tigers in what maybe is one of the top 2-3 wins of college football's week one. It just a I think statement win for USC. But again, before we get into that, we had I don't know what you want to call him, correspondent on the ground in the stands. Chris Arledge was there, and after the game ended, my phone buzzes and I get this video from him. So gonna let you guys listen to that first.
We'll fight on, Trojans. I'm here in the stadium, madness behind me. Surprisingly, all the chants of Tiger Bait have died down. I don't know why. Maybe we're not still Tiger Bait. I'll say this, that's the best win in a very long time for a USC football team. All of us said if Lincoln Riley could combine his offense with a defense, we'd be back in business. Lincoln Riley hired a great defensive staff, and those guys balled out. LSU is a good football team. USC is a better football team. We'll be in the top 10 this week, and we've got a shot at the playoff. That's a hell of a night, Trojans. I'll see you next week.
All right, so that's that from Chris. I think USC fans probably feeling similar. So guys, let's jump into our 5 things here from this one. And honestly, we could probably go 50 things from this game. There was so much buildup. The offseason felt like it was about 3.5 years to get to this one. So as always, we're going to go player of the game to start off. Again, USC's 27-20 win against LSU. Mark, go ahead. Your player of the game from this one.
You're gonna make me pick one?
Player of the game.
Okay. You know what? You could give this MVP to quite a few players, but I'm going with Kyron Hudson. His game, what he did today, even with those couple of drops, he set the tone. That one-handed grab, I'm still trying to figure out how he came down with that. But you think, you got Miller Moss, Kyron Hudson. These guys have been around since Clay Helton. And for those guys to experience, and I actually asked Kyron if he remembered after the game, that game at Cal, back in 2021, he was the last player off the field. He greeted every player as they left. And back then he told me, I just want to soak this in. I want to remember this. I don't want to have this feeling again. All of a sudden, 3-4 years later, here you are. You're a team captain. You're making one of the greatest plays a USC wide receivers ever made, and you're leading the team in receptions and yards for the game. That's a pretty good game. And you're doing it with Miller Moss, who, you've grown up with, you've known for quite a while. You both hung out, you stuck through it. You could have gone somewhere else. You waited your time, and look, you get this type of reward. You're playing in a huge game against LSU, national TV, and you literally might have this game. It might not be 23-0 like USC at Jordan-Hare against Auburn, but this type of game is going to. This team is going to ride this wave of confidence. What Kyron did out there, he's just a no-nonsense guy. It's hard to get emotion out of him, so I'm going to do that for him.
Yeah, you saw the one-handed grab that he brought in. The second one on the sideline, our vantage point there, you didn't see it in real time that it was one hand and then bringing it in two. Just two
Right.
Unbelievable catches. Greg, your player of the game from this one.
Well, I can't top Mark. That was a great story. You hate to make a position almost relative every time, but the truth of the matter is nobody had more pressure on them than Miller Moss. He had so much focus on him. Then they started bringing up from 40 years ago, and SC was tied. I remember that I think I was in my 30s or 20s, whatever I was at the time. I don't know what I am now, but I am what I am. The bottom line is that I don't know. I thought that Miller Moss, given my memories of what he did in the Holiday Bowl, was unbelievable, really, because this this was to be the expected, okay, we got it. You had a good game against a team that was missing some players, and now you're number 23 in the country. Now we expect you to show us what you probably could do in the season down the road. And nothing fazed him. Nothing fazed him. And he got racked a number of times on Sunday night. And my hat's off to him. He put the ball where it's supposed to be under some real duress.
Yeah.
So the fact of the matter is they wouldn't have, I'm not going to say they couldn't have won it without him, but he put them in a position that they could win with him. And that's going to make a big difference when they play at Michigan. Just the whole build up. Forget about the game itself. It's going to be what it's going to be. But I feel confident that SC will come to play.
You guys both went offense. I'm gonna go defense. And look, I'm gonna cheat. I'm not gonna pick a player of the game. The entity of the game is Danton Lynn, the USC defensive coordinator, and we have to talk about him off the top. And this is how I'm gonna shove that in there. I don't care what the numbers say. I don't care. I don't care how many yards LSU had. I don't care to talk about the points. I don't care to talk about Garrett Nussmeier throwing the ball kind of all over the place, the LSU receivers. It doesn't matter. USC's defense played with an edge and a tenacity and an ability to tackle that we have not. Like, it's when you go back to find video of that before, it's grainy, right? Like it looks like from just a forgotten era of football, to find a defensive performance where every single time the defense went out there, you were confident, right? It wasn't like they were forcing turnovers all the time or 3-and-outs every time, but you knew every time this is going to be okay. They are not going to rip off a 55-yard touchdown run every other play against this defense. And for him, you saw that he did it against UCLA. You thought, okay, he's got to do it again here. Are all the pieces the same? The schedule last year, he had the front seven last year. Does it happen? And for the defense to have the confidence to come out and do that, and really it's bled over to the entire team. I mean, the program has picked up on this sort of defense first thought at this point. And to do that in one off season, and to do it with his sort of calm, unassuming, quiet, at least publicly, demeanor, the way he does it is just outstanding. And so I'm not going to pick a defensive player, although Kamari Ramsey's up there again for what he did this offseason and some of these solo tackles that he made in this one. You could pick a few other guys. Dan Lynn was that's an unbelievable sort of opening performance from him and from the USC defense, just in the competence and confidence in which they played. Here we go. We're going to go play of the game now. Mark with Kyron Hudson kind of covered a couple of big ones, but we'll go back. Mark, you go ahead. Your play of the game in this one.
Well, you know what? I can give Kyron credit for the one-handed catch. You gave him a credit for another one. What about the one towards the end of the game, where not only he caught the ball, but he took the shot to the head that set up Woody Marks' winning touchdown run? That was a shot. I mean, that would be one play of the game. I think Jalen Smith had a really big tackle that helped the defense get off the field. So tonight it's all Kyron Hudson as far as I'm concerned. What he was able to do, and because he was able to bounce back even after those two drops, which those were significant drops. So for him to stay in the game, keep his head in there, for Coach Riley, for the coaching staff, for Miller Moss to keep going back to him, that play at the end of the game was significant.
Greg, your play of the game in this one.
Well, everything that Mark said, I could agree with. But I'm going to take a different view, probably because of my background of coaching. I thought the play of the game was in the first quarter when LSU had the ball and they were just ripping yardage down. I don't know where they started their drive in the first quarter. And then they got, inside, the red zone, and you go, okay, we know how this one usually wraps up, right? This will mean they're going to ram it right down Broadway. It's going to be over. And we'll say, wow, this has really changed, hasn't it? But you know what? It did change. And part of that change came from, this is different than when you played Alabama, a number of years ago. And it doesn't have to end in points scored. It doesn't have to end in defeat. You can compete. And I said to people that I was talking to, this is a big deal when you've lost the way SC has lost defensively, and all this change of motto, and all of a sudden you go, oh, here they go, they're coming in. It's going to be another 90-yard drive. And it doesn't happen. They're not rewarded. So I felt that kind of changed the complexion of both teams.
Yeah, I mean that first drive for LSU, they end up 1st and 8 on the 8 after kind of cruising in, and then go 4 and out. USC gets a 4th down stop, and LSU, I thought, again, Greg, I'm with you. That was a huge thing for them to come out with no points, because that's 2 decisions from Brian Kelly. First, to win the toss and take the ball, right? Like put your offense out there and then go for it on 4th down. That's 2 statements of, we're going to score on this defense, right? We have tons of confidence in our offense, and we're going to put it out there first. To come away with nothing on that drive, it did give you a sense of like, hey, this USC defense maybe could figure this out. My play of the game is going to go Eric Gentry's tackle for loss on a 3rd and 1, right after USC did not convert on its 4th down, right? So the USC's offense had a couple. LSU's offense had a couple possessions when they were up 17-13. And again, it's, if they drive this down and score a touchdown, that's starting to stretch a little bit. And it felt at that point like USC's defense maybe had kind of run its course. Like it put everything into it. And now the offense is faltering a little bit. You started to see LSU lean a little bit on USC. For them to rise up and get 2 big stops, and Gentry's was the second one, to kind of knife in the way he did off the edge. Again, it's one of those, when the coaches and Eric Gentry say, hey, we like the way we can use him and he can do some different things right up on the line of scrimmage, cutting through a couple tight ends to make a tackle in the backfield. That's something that he can do, along with dropping into coverage, getting hands on passes, and all of that. I thought that was a huge play for him. And I think it was indicative. LSU had three times 3rd and 3 or less, and they ran it, right? So it wasn't all their 3rd downs, but 3 times they had 3rd and 3, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 1, and they ran it 3 times on there. USC stopped them twice, a 1-yard gain and a negative 1-yard gain. LSU got 10 yards on the other one. But again, if you went into that game saying LSU is going to run the ball on 3 3rd and shorts, how many is USC going to stop? 2, and one of them being like a game-changing play at the end. Again, take it. You would absolutely take that going in. So that play from Gentry, both because it's him, right? Because of what he went through last year, and the linebacker sort of struggles all year, because he feels like he's playing with so much confidence this year. That to me was huge. What was a huge play in this game.
USC gave up 117 yards on the ground.
Would have taken it. Maybe would have taken 170 on the ground against LSU. 117 was impressive, and LSU had some yards outside and passing yards. I don't know if people expected those numbers, but against the run, I don't know what else you say at this point for that. Let's go. Speaking of kind of guessing what might happen, expectation met. Mark, yours in this one. What happened the way you saw it?
Nothing. Not a thing. I really thought this was going to be a more of a high scoring game. Defenses were going to take their time to kind of figure it out. Be some bad beats, big plays, and it never happened. What I did expect to happen was to see Zachariah Branch have a big game on special teams, but he kind of ran into the kicker on his way to the end zone, which wasn't expected. So I expected Zachariah to break one, and he did, but like I said, he ran into the kicker somehow. So there wasn't I don't think this game really played out the way I expected. I thought that USC would play better on defense. They did. I thought USC's secondary would be a little bit more stingy, but I think that was part of the scheme, the way they were set up. Because once it got into the red zone, you weren't doing anything against USC's defensive back. So what went expected? Not a whole lot, but I liked the result.
Greg, you have expectations that were met in this one?
Well, my first expectation wasn't going to be decided until after the game was over, because I have friends of mine who have covered Ryan Kelly for a number of years, going back to his Cincinnati days. And they said he'll be really nice if he wins. It says if he doesn't win a particular high-level game, he's going to go absolutely berserk. And it won't make any difference if it's in front of the media or it's in front of his family. And I watched today a couple of times because it was so entertaining, how Kelly just absolutely put his fist like he was trying to drill a hole through the desk that he was sitting in to answer the questions. And to his credit, he did say, I am really unhappy with my team, and they're going to know about it. And everybody I've talked to says they'll know about it because that's just who he is. Now, what I expected is what happened in the first drive for LSU. And to make it a quick synopsis here, I thought when they got inside the 10, what have you, that this was the moment of truth. I mean, a field goal would have been nice, right? You'd probably say, okay, we're used to touchdowns, but the field goal didn't happen. I have said from the very beginning, this group of players that Riley has to prove to themselves that they can put on the big boys' pants and stop getting beat up at the line of scrimmage. And they went through 4 quarters of, I guess the only word I can think of is maturing. And we'll see how that works. Not just next game, because Utah State isn't Michigan. But then again, there's a team complex with his group, and it could take them a long way in a positive manner.
Yeah, my expectation that I had going, I thought there'd be some more points, Mark. I'm with you. So, but my expectation, and we said this a lot kind of during fall camp and any kind of preview we did, the players had so much confidence in Danton Lynn's scheme and just the way they were going to play. I didn't know if they were going to be able to really shut down the LSU running game, if they were going to be able to really hold LSU to 20 points or even less than 30. But I did expect to see a defense out on the field where you said, okay, that looks like defense, right? Like that is competent defense. And the difference between how that group last year played under Alex Grinch to how this group is playing, again, one game, but you have to see how they came out against probably the best offensive line they're going to play this year. Maybe, and I'm trying to flash through the season right now, but maybe the best quarterback they're going to play this year. And some of the best skill talent they're going to play this year. Like this was not the tune-up game. This was, what do you have right now out of the gate? And so again, the expectation was that they were going to be competent defensively. And if you want to talk like what you said, you had an expectation that kind of hit, but then went a little bit further. I again thought they would be good. I didn't know that they would be that good. Game one out of the chute against a what is going to be a solid LSU offense. Let's go to the fourth thing. Mark, back to you. Your surprise in this one, and I know you kind of covered a bunch of surprises in that last one too, but anything else that jumped out as a surprise?
Just how physical this team played. I mean, I knew they were going to take that next step, because if they didn't, they weren't going to, they're not going to do well this year. But it's how big of a step they took. I mean, Coach Riley even kind of threw, that was Big Ten football we watched out there. I mean, he noticed it. And they were doing, look, LSU said, we're coming out there for a fist fight. And I wasn't surprised that USC fought back. I was surprised that they had LSU kind of on their heels a little bit. Will Campbell, 2 false starts. They were getting into his head. There was some concern on LSU's side. They were getting a little chippy. They weren't expecting USC to punch back as hard as they did. So you saw a couple of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties on LSU. And I think that caught even Trojan fans by surprise. It's like, that doesn't look anything like USC 2023 or 2022. That USC team, again, one game, but you're starting to get that feeling like, okay, I know what it's like to play boring football, run the ball, find the tight end, use the wide receivers, play defense. It's a good winning combination. I'll take boring football all year long. This game, it was a perfect way to start the season, because they're going to be ready when they get to Ann Arbor. There's not going to be any surprises.
Greg, surprise. You have a surprise from this one?
I was surprised that they didn't fold as each quarter went, because as each quarter went, there was that feeling that they were really in control of the game, but the scoreboard said, no, you're very much in the game. It's 2020 or it's 13-10 or whatever it was. They were never safe, but you never felt that all of a sudden LSU was going to have this big breakout of an offense, and they couldn't get it going. I thought that actually the surprise to me was, I think the game got into Brian Kelly's head.
Yeah.
I think Brian Kelly could not believe that he was so used to beating the living daylights out of USC on the field that it wasn't changing. And he's, an experienced coach, and he knew that they were in trouble. He knew it, because once SC felt, hey, we could beat these guys, and they did. I don't know what he said to him once they got in the locker room, but I know what he said when he was at the podium, and it wasn't very pretty.
Yeah, my surprise from this one, I've got a couple. One of them piggybacks on Greg's there too, but the first one was USC's kind of lack of success in the red zone early. I mean, there was a run of 3 drives where USC's in the red zone 3 times and comes away with 6 points, and that's not a Lincoln Riley offense. I mean, historically, he has been very, very good in the red zone. You think, again, the talk was USC has bigger offensive linemen. We can create a push. What they have on the outside with those kind of red zone weapons, and now using the tight ends a little bit. So to not have a ton of success there, I know the touchdown run early from Woody Marks is a great power run. 2 tight ends made unbelievable blocks on that one. The one at the end is another well-blocked play, and you score a red zone touchdown there. But that middle, where you really maybe could have separated and put some distance, for it not to go well for the USC offense, was a surprise. And I'm with Greg too. There was absolutely a spot later in that game, second half, where you felt like it might have been getting away, and the defensive line, maybe that, again, like I said earlier, that maybe that was all they had. I think you saw some of the depth on that defensive line being able to rotate guys in and out. The offense kind of had a drive when they really needed it to get the defense some rest. And you look at that the fourth quarter for LSU, 6 rushing attempts, 3 rushing yards in the fourth quarter, when again that offensive line had a chance to say, we're the best group in this game, we are going to take this over, and they couldn't do it. And that, I think, is a major statement from USC and how they were able to kind of rise back up and finish that game. Let's go to our last thing here, our 5th thing, biggest takeaway. Mark, I know we've talked about kind of a lot of things that you can extrapolate out the rest of the year. And first game of the year, right? Lincoln Riley tries to warn us, don't write the narrative for the season. But what are you taking away from this one as your biggest takeaway?
This team's confident. We know they're talented. We know the type of physical skill set they have, the natural God-given ability. But now they're playing with some confidence. They're playing with some physicality. They're playing with swagger. But they're not, flaunting it. They're just going out there and doing it. There was no showboating out there. There wasn't, making a big play and dancing and getting everybody's faces. That's what LSU was doing. This team has turned the page. And whether, I think you have to give a lot of credit. You mentioned at the top of the show to Danton Lynn, that defensive coaching staff. Well, they might be in charge of the defense, but that attitude, that culture has found its way onto the opposite side of the ball as well. This is a complete team. That's my takeaway. And that's the best takeaway I can have out of this game, despite the win.
Greg, your biggest takeaway from this one?
I think the biggest takeaway from this one is disappointment is not going to be looked at as waiting for the next 10 games to say which one is going to be the one that's going to pop the bubble, because I don't actually think the bubble is going to be popped. And the reason I say that is everything wrapped around Caleb, for the last 2 years. And everybody was kind of waiting for him to make the big play, this will be on ESPN and all that. Now it's kind of like, I've got to do something for the team. And Miller Moss does not present a threat. He's one of us. Not that they didn't like Caleb Williams, because they did. But the fact of the matter is Miller Moss is the type of player that players can rally around without feeling as though they're second level, if that makes sense to you. It's like we're in this all together. Any one of us could be on Sports Center if we make a really good play. I don't think they were jealous of him because they knew how good he was. But I think in the end, what they have is a team of players. They're all devoted to one thing. If you go over the list of guys on the roster, look at their biographies and how many games they won in high school, what awards they got, and how they kind of were part of a bigger unit. When you go to a modern day, it's a whole different ball game. And that's not a bad thing, but it's a different thing. And, I think that what they have now is a situation where we can all do this together. And I think that's the very important point. That's why they have a team championship. It's great to be all CIF, as we call it out here, which is like all Southern California. But to be on a championship team, there's nothing that beats it. It speaks for itself.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway is I think I kind of mentioned this. I think that was the toughest game of the year. I think that was probably the most likely loss. I think when you looked at that coming in, at Michigan is tough. Penn State at home is tough. This win proves, I think, to USC fans and to USC players, there's not a guaranteed loss on the schedule the rest of the way. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they show up in the Coliseum against a Utah State team that again put up a ton of yards against Robert Morris. But that's a team that if you're an elite team, you saw what Ole Miss did to Furman and Alabama to Western Kentucky. I think Utah State is probably better than those, but USC hasn't won a game in the Coliseum since October 7th of last year. They're riding a 3-game losing streak in the Coliseum. This is a short week. Can you put that same effort and intensity together against a Utah State team that you did against LSU? And that's the question. But if I tie this back into my takeaway, even watching them celebrate on the field after the win and clearly how amped up and excited they were for that, there is that was just business sort of mentality to this team, and listening to Lincoln Riley after and the players afterward. And if you can win a game like that after being told all offseason, you have no chance, that defense is not going to be turned around, and you can kind of treat it as we made one play at a time and then we won. What did you expect? I think that is a really good mindset to have as a team. And I think that helps them in an environment like Ann Arbor, when some of these Big Ten teams come to the Coliseum and maybe it's closer to a 50-50 split in terms of fan support than a true home game. So I think winning this game is huge for the program, for the team. I just don't think you can overstate how big this game is from any number of angles. So I know that they'll take it. I know they're going to say we didn't go to make a statement. We don't go into that. We don't whatever. This was a statement. This was a statement win, and it's okay. Again, it's a short week for USC fans, but go ahead and take Monday, take Tuesday, take Wednesday, celebrate this one for a few days. You deserve it after watching the defensive side the last few years and kind of the team as a whole. Again, the last however many years you want to go back, but this feels like a new one. This feels like a program that found its feet in this one, and we're going to see how well they can play the rest of the year. But an unbelievable start to the 2024 season for USC. So that's our look back at a 27-20 win for USC over LSU. Our 5 things for Greg Katz, for Mark Culkin, and for correspondent Chris Arledge earlier also. This is Eric McKinney. Thanks for watching WeAreSC.